This is the podcast overview for Module 4. We will be covering chapters 7 and 8. So the content is liking, love, and other close relationships, and then social influence. So here are the items this week to be focusing on. Kind of gives you an overview of what to expect. I have the chapter objectives for chapters 7 and 8, and you can click here on the links to find out more about each of these objectives and how they fit for the material for this chapter. You have the lecture slides for each chapter, and so I recommend using those along with the reading to help you focus in on key points. You have the 2 articles that go along with the chapters as well. And then we have the videos. So you're going to see a lot of very short videos. And then this week I only have a couple longer videos. So these are all very short. They have to do with some of the principles in chapter 7, liking, love, and close relationships. So things like proximity and mere exposure effect. These are factors that affect who we like and who we become attracted to via friends or romantic relationships. I have a video about the halo effect, which is talked about in chapter 7. Sternberg's triangular theory of love, which looks at all the key factors in relationships that are of a romantic nature, the different components that go into people being attracted to one another, and then what makes for a lasting relationship, what variables and what factors need to be present for that to happen. So this mimics a lot of what's in chapter 7. Then I have a crash course video on social influence. So this covers like all the key factors that you're going to hear about in chapter 8 when we're looking at social influence. And so that category, social influence, covers conformity, obedience, compliance. And then we'll look at them a little bit further with some of these targeted videos I have for you. I have one from Khan Academy on conformity and obedience. What exactly are these terms? How do we understand them and how do they work together? I have a very short video on Solomon Asch's original conformity experiment, and this is described in your chapter. So this kind of helps give you a nice illustration of that. And then I have the original full documentary of the Milgram experiment in 1962. And so I recommend you watching this before you then watch this one, which is a modern day take or remake of the Milgram study. And this one was done by Jerry Berger. And it was done in the early 2000s, I believe. He wanted to see if he could replicate Milgram's findings. There are some differences to his study. You'll want to understand what those differences were and what did he find? What were his results and how did they compare to the original Milgram study? So I give you some questions here to consider. And I don't usually do that with the videos, but this is a big one. And Milgram in general is a really big part of what goes into social influence, and he's part of the reason why the area of social psychology even began. So his work on obedience and conformity really spun off of Solomon Asch's work, and the two kind of paved the way for the field to begin. So I really want you to understand what happened in the full documentary. This is also one of the articles you're going to read, the original published work of Stanley Milgram when he did his study on obedience. And then you can look at the modern day take on it. I have another fun video on conformity in a waiting room. This is from Brain Games. It's kind of a nice one to look at social behavior. And then I have a video called Free Hugs Campaign. This is a campaign that launched a while back that had to do with conformity a little bit in a social setting, and how do we or do we not adhere to some of the social norms in society. And then lastly, I have a video about the Abu Ghraib prison atrocity that happened early 2000s again. And this is sort of like a modern day example, real life example of obedience gone wrong. So, you're going to hear in the Milgram study that obedience is good. Obeying parents and teachers and authorities is a good thing. We need to have it. If we don't have it, we have anarchy. But obedience to unjust authority, authority that is hurting the people it's supposed to be protecting, is not good. And anytime it involves cruel or inhumane treatment, that is where we kind of draw the line. So you can take a look at what happened. Abu Ghraib is a prison that our military runs, and it holds suspected and convicted terrorists. And so you'll see what happened there as a result of military officers following orders. So all of that's important. You want to make sure you've done the readings and watched all the videos before you attempt the discussion questions for this week. And so here they are. We're going to be looking at media images of attractiveness and how those compare to today. So a lot of integrating chapter 7 here, looking at the contrast effect. So you'll want to be sure you understand the contrast effect, which is talked about in the chapter, how we are affected by what we see around us a lot. And then we then compare that to what we have in reality around us. And there can be a stark contrast, and that can leave individuals feeling a little lacking, or like, they don't measure up, or what they have or who they're with doesn't measure up. And then the second question deals with the aspects of chapter 8. So we'll take a look at the Milgram study and talk about it. We're going to look at it through the lens of obedience. So you have to have watched all the videos and done the readings and have a good understanding of what happened in the Milgram study. And then I want you to talk about what factors played a role in people obeying in the study when they weren't sure they should. Why did people obey? Why did the majority continue to shock participants? And I say shock in quotes because they weren't really being shocked, but the person didn't know that. Why did they continue to shock participants even when they didn't feel good about it, when they thought it was wrong, or they were worried about it? And then take that, and what implications do these findings have for the real world? And when we look at situations like Abu Ghraib, and individuals being accused of committing crimes, committing atrocities against humanity, what do we learn from the Milgram study about why that happens? Why do people commit atrocities against humanity in the name of obedience? Is it because they can't think for themselves? Is it because they're scared? What factors did Milgram's research show play a role in why people will obey even when they don't want to? And knowing this, how can we then apply that to our military? What could our military be doing differently to avoid those kinds of occurrences? So those are your discussion questions for the week. I really want you to integrate in the readings and find a way to integrate at least 2 of the videos you've seen into your responses this week. Then you'll be ready to take exam 4, which covers chapters 7 and 8. Same format as usual. 30 questions, 1 point each, multiple choice. And that wraps up the week. As you're making your way through this material and you're working through the concepts, please feel free to email me. Let me know if you need to meet or talk about anything, talk anything over. I'm free to do that, as some of you already have.